So this is the 2355 GMT edition of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Baby Angel Geronimo is the world's bestest baby angel Geronimo, who was born in New Zealand and adored by his human mom, Leonie Walker. And then baby angel Geronimo was invited to come to the United Kingdom, where a woman called Helen MacDonald invited him to live in South Gloucester with her and other members of his species. The baby angel Geronimo has witnessed unprecedented, exceptional evilness perpetrated by the evil personification called Boris Johnson and his likes and his cabals and his ilks. Everything that baby angel Geronimo has witnessed is pertinent to the truthful assessment and understanding of the failures of the United Kingdom state. Sunday's reports that Nicola, who had been missing for 23 days, apparently had been found in the river. That is not the complete story. The story about the role of the police in relation to Nicola going missing is going to continue for days, weeks, months, and years. Because the police in the United Kingdom have been enjoying for nearly 200 years extremely high amount of power over the ordinary citizens. But that amount of power has been allowed to remain mostly unexamined, unaudited, to the detriment of people who have been assured that the police would be protecting them in the United Kingdom. The evidence of the police behavior, as measured by the behavior of the London Metropolitan Police, wrongly called Met Police, because Met is also the brief for meteorological, the word meteorological. So it should be Metropolitan, London Metropolitan Police. There is a smaller police force attached with London, which is City of London Police, which is allegedly independent from the London Metropolitan Police. Whether the London Metropolitan Police or the City of London Police or the Lancashire Police Constabulary or the Sheffield, South Yorkshire Police, talking about the Hillsborough massacre of fans. Whichever force in England or in the United Kingdom is being referred to in the context of policing duties and policing services is a reference not to action by the police, but to lack of action, dysfunction, disinformation, and defamation of the victims, as has been done to Nicola by the police and their propaganda machine in Lancashire Police Constabulary. Now, the baby angel Geronimo has witnessed and is witnessing all of these, and there is nothing in any of these failures and dysfunction, unfitness for purpose, that baby angel Geronimo has not anticipated, or one or the other of the failings that baby angel Geronimo could not foresee. All the submissions, all the submissions made in accordance with the so called legal process by and on behalf of baby angel Geronimo to the various so called courts in the English jurisdiction. All the evidence have been absolutely true and truthful. And all the questions that have been put to the depraved evilness called DEFRA, all the questions that have been put have been based on the evidence. And the questions have been left unanswered by the criminals at DEFRA, including as personified by the evilness called Christian evilness Middlemas. And those failures have been diluted. The impact of those failures have been diluted or partly treated as justifiable by many of the lackeys, stooges, and opportunist careerists who suck up to the corrupt bureaucracy at DEFRA. Now, everything that baby angel Geronimo says is true, truthful, and doubt whatsoever. And the lessons that baby angel Geronimo can teach the rest of society, or what remains of society in Britain after the corrupt and mentally and morally bankrupt Margaret Thatcher stupidly as enthusiastically as he could spew the line that suited the agenda that was being fronted by Boris Johnson. All the lies and all the untruths and all the inventions that Boris Johnson spewed and uttered as the fronter of the so-called movement for Brexit. So what they did in the period, in the run-up to the actual so-called vote in June 2016, was to persistently parade the European Union, as it then was, still was, as the source that was taking from the United Kingdom hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds every year. And the other thing was that Johnson perpetrated the intentionally conceived lie that if the United Kingdom didn't come out of the European Union at the Brexit referendum in June, then any number of Turks would enter the United Kingdom because the European Union would allow them to. Now, that was a lie by the evilness called Boris Johnson on about 100 levels because of the history of the European Western Europe, let's say, or the history of Western Europe in the last 1,000 years or so. The chance of Turkey, which is an overwhelmingly Muslim country, religious numbers indicating that Turkey would never be allowed to join a predominantly Christian and predominantly anti-Muslim bloc called the European Union. And even if Turkey were to apply, even the acceptance of an application notionally from Turkey would take years, even decades. So Boris Johnson knew that. And despite the fact that he knew that, he was telling a lie that the Turks would invade the British. And it never would happen. Not the Turks. So Boris Johnson is over capitalizing on his alleged ability to mobilize opposition to a phantom entity that doesn't exist because the European Union of pre-referendum June 2016 doesn't exist. It has disappeared because the United Kingdom has pulled out of the European Union. What Rishi Sunak is doing in his current negotiations over Northern Ireland is nothing to do with the UK becoming a member of the European Union again. But that is the spectre that the habitual congenital liar Boris Johnson is holding in front of the Little Englanders and the racists So, what they are saying is that Boris Johnson is going to cause nuisance to Rishi Sunak. Is factually true, he wants to do that. But with Keir Starmer coming forward and offering his MP's support to Sunak, no matter how excited Boris Johnson supporters may be at the prospect of Johnson derailing Rishi Sunak, the realistic chance of that derailment happening looks slimmer by the speculation. We now return to the case of that there is, including really private report objects of years of demands about the police, that there should be proper policing established in this country. Nicola, Sarah Everard, Zara Alina, and all the other women that have been murdered. Well, the police have failed to protect them. Sabina Begum, Sabina Nessa, Sabina Nessa. Police have become non existent. But when they appear to be existent, what they do is destroy the reputation, destroy the good name of someone like Nicola, who needed their help, who needed their respect, understanding, and support. 23 days. This is what the Times has said today. Why did it take 23 days? Now, this is only the beginning of the questions about the police. Now, the term police is a word of abuse when it is examined in light of the actual behavior of the police, who, according to dozens and dozens of admissions reported by the mainstream media in the United Kingdom in the last, let's say, 2-3 years, routinely, police, not just the London police, that is the Metropolitan Police, but police forces in other parts of the country routinely ditch, bin, destroy reports of crime put to them by the members of the public, by the victims of crime. Now, crime essentially is a wide ranging word, but it does include life and death. So, for example, when the police released the information about the fact or alleged fact that they were called to Nicola's home 17 days ago, or 17 days before she disappeared. I mean, what did they do after the visit? Because as it is bound to appear in due course, whatever happened to Nicola included many possibilities of saving her. by providing timely and adequate care, support, and help. Immediately starting with the discovery that she had probably needed help in terms of medication and all that. So the questions must include who decided to leave her alone after finding that she needed help? What happened? It reminds of the young woman in her 30s, called Laura, who in Sussex, Laura's body was found mummified in her social housing flat, I think in Woking in Surrey. And one of the things that has been said about the last contact she had with human beings was that her family, her siblings and her parents, I suppose, or her mother, if there is only one parent, decided, within quotation mark reluctantly, to respect Laura's wishes and to not contact her. Now, that is something to do with the fact they are now saying, because Laura is not around to clarify any of these versions, that she was hearing voices in her head saying that her family members are trying to do her damage, harm her, or even kill her. When she shared this set of information that can only be related to psychiatric kind of state, the family are now saying that they decided, by showing her due respect, that they would not contact her because that is how she felt. She felt that they were not trying to help her. Now, the point is, at what point did the members of the family, Laura's sister, sibling, and brother, at what point did they decide that stopping contacts with her also meant that they should not be making contacts with the social services, mental health support services, and even the police? Who advised them to conclude that whatever she was saying, she had been hearing in her head, was to be accepted as indicating that she didn't need help? Clearly, overwhelmingly, she needed help, urgent help. Now, back to Nicola and the 23 days that have passed. Who the police being sleazy and stupid and releasing information about her health? It is all the agencies, the mental health people, the local council social services, and members of the family, and her partner, Paul. Is it Paul? Yes. What did they individually and collectively, what did they do if they did anything to protect Nicola? The pictures that have been published on the front pages of the Fleet Street newspapers, the British newspapers in the last, especially the last 10 days, are consistent with Nicola being a competent individual, confident individual, one who is able to look after her looks. She looks tidy and neat. So, what was it that went so horribly wrong, and when, that made her untraceable? This is only the beginning of the overdue questioning. The police, the mental health, and the local council. Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, not far from Lancashire. What help did he think his authority could extend to help Laura, especially in the days that followed the news that she had been missing? And there are hundreds of questions, not only owed to Laura, answers to which are owed to Laura, but answers are equally strongly owed to many thousands of other people needing help. But at this stage, at this time, as we do this broadcast, they are not heard from because they are not in the news. But it should be assumed that at any given time, anywhere in the United Kingdom, every part of the United Kingdom has got people needing life defining, life and death defining help and care and support and understanding. To what extent are the locally authorized local authorities doing their job? And to what extent are they being monitored? What are the police in those local areas doing in similar comparable situations where the police have been called by an individual or a family or a relation about an individual? What do the police do? Quite apart from the Laura, what's her name? I have to check the second name of Laura in Woking. So, Laura, okay, so this second name is Winham. Laura's second name is Winham, and this item is from the website of the Woking News and Mail, which is Laura's local outlet. And this is timed at 4:44, that is 16:44 GMT, on Friday, the 27th of January 2023. Now, that date, 27th of January, is exactly the date when Nicola Bully reportedly disappeared or went missing. Now, this is the first paragraph of this Woking News and Mail. The family of Shearwater woman, the family of a Shearwater woman, who lay dead for more than 3 years before her body was discovered, is expected to demand that the Surrey coroner should examine whether various care and welfare services acted appropriately to keep her safe. Was the question I put about her earlier, and the questions I apply very much strongly to the case of Nicola. A hearing into the death of Laura Winham, 38, is to be held at Woking on Monday morning. That would be the end of January. It will establish the scope of a full inquest. It will hear how her body was discovered in her social housing flat in Devonshire Avenue by her brother Roy in May 2021, after he had asked the police to break into the premises. The question is, why wait until then? Because it had been more than a year since they lost contact with her, or they claim now, post facto, that they respected her wish and stopped contacting her. Now, this new paragraph says that Laura was severely mentally ill and had become estranged from her family. Now, that estrangement needs item by item clarification and detail. What was the estrangement? Who initiated the estrangement? And did they keep Laura in front of their minds and their eyes? Or did they just forget about her? If her body stayed there undiscovered for 3 years, it shows that they really didn't think about her much. And there is an untruthful statement in that same paragraph. The second sentence says that she had repeatedly failed to reply to letters, phone calls, and texts, and answered the door to family members over 3.5 years. Now, over 3.5 years could be just a part of the 3.5 years. It cannot be continuously doing as they allege she did, failed to reply to letters, etc., etc., for that period, because she was dead. She was dead for 3.5 years. Well, 3 years at least. Laura's sister Nikki said social and mental health services and the housing association had turned a blind eye to several warning signs of her plight. Everybody who was in contact with Laura and had a duty to her at some stage simply wiped their hands of her and forgot her, she said. So Laura was abandoned. Now, to what extent did Nicola get attention and support from the mental health people, the local council, social services, and members of our family, her parents and the sister, in addition to Paul, her partner. Whether they were married, Paul and Nicola, has not been clearly stated, but let's assume that because they had two children together and they had been together for several years, they were quite close and were be treated as a couple. Now, there is a picture online on the website that I'm looking at. I'm scrolling. It's got a picture. This is the new property purchased by Boris Johnson and his wife. So, what is happening in the general kind of narrative about caring for people who need care? I mean, very severely in need, high need of care, is not reported in the mainstream media or even the local media, really. The local media, because of the arrival of the internet, I would say, has become less focused on what used to be called human interest stories that would actually report on stories such as the likes of Laura or Nicola. So the only time when the issues of care and neglect and it is a wrong word to say tragedy, the actual outcome or the ending of the particular search for the likes of Nicola, that is when the issues become prominent. That is to say, people who are not immediately currently affected by the emergencies do take an interest out of curiosity. I know people across the country, I know some of them personally, who have been praying for Nicola, as I have been, because at the end of each day of misinformation and propaganda issued by the police, the most ethical and moral thing appears to be to pray for Nicola rather than go into the details of the latest lies and misinformation. As I said, looking at her appearance, Nicola looks like a competent individual, and she was working as a mortgage advisor. Now, anyone who knows about mortgage, it's a complex matter, and it involves a lot of discipline, mental discipline, and financial understanding. And by the accounts of her daily routine, taking Willow for the walk and the dropping the two girls at school and hopefully collecting them afterwards, Laura was very competent and a well rounded individual. And one of her best friends said that she was very considerate, full of consideration for other people. So she wasn't like kind of suffering from any ordinary lack of understanding and capacity. So, what did happen that went so wrong? What happened? And that question must be asked and they must be answered by all those who are in post, have been in post to look after people in Laura's situation. We say again, heartfelt prayers for Laura and support and solidarity for her loved ones, genuine loved ones, her children. The two girls were reportedly saying that they hope their mom would be home soon. One is 6 years old, the other is 9 years old. How do you begin to talk to these girls? So, anyone who has done any damage to Laura's reputation or has impacted on her safety and protection before it became too late must be held to account. For Nicola's sake, and for the sake of others who might be undergoing similar desperation as Nicola did. But those who are going through the desperation are not being noticed yet. In the case of the local councils, which are and in terms of emergency, have got the second. The local councils have got permanent employees in permanent posts. They're called the social services, adult social services, children's social services. These are supposedly there to meet the emergencies, like in the case of Nicola, emergency faced by Nicola. What are they doing? And who in each of the local councils, whatever the designation of the particular department, who in the local councils actually monitors and audits the behavior of the social services. As we have been broadcasting very on Newham Council and Hrs Council, we have chronicled in the last 4 years of our broadcasting because we began during 2020. Chapter and verse of the corruption in Newham Council, in Tower Hamlets Council, and also in the Labour Party and in the community, and the corruption among the so called private sector landlords. We have got evidence of systematic policy on the part of various sections in Niyam Council, for example, to behave exactly in the way that most of the police forces do when they receive complaints and reports about crimes. When Niyam Council's various employees, including Roxana Fias, the so called executive mayor, when they receive written evidence and information telling them that something is being done seriously, wrongly by employees and other people concerned, their first and most persistent reaction and response is to pretend that they didn't receive the information. So, Ruxana Fiaz, because it is she, to put it in the language of private eye, Roxana Fiaz, let's find the item again. There are two items. Okay, this one is not new. We're citing it not for the first time, but it warrants and it justifies citing again. It says Angry Moms Protest Council Meeting after Domestic Abuse. Now, let's see the full heading. Obviously, the domestic abuse is not the last word in that heading. And it's on the website mylondon.news. It says Angry Moms Protest Council Meeting after domestic abuse survivor offered home near abuser. A protester from the crowd blasted the council for not respecting people. This is a piece by the person called Ruby Gregory, who is being described as local democracy reporter. She posted it at 14:23 GMT on Tuesday, the 17th of January 2023. And in their piece, they've got a file copy of the picture of Roxana Fiaz from YouTube. That photograph is not from the actual meeting. So the photograph has got fine grains and it looks fresh rather than the other photographs from the actual event. The Roxana Fiaz, after the meeting resumed, and I'll come to the meaning of resume because it was Winston Vaughan who chaired the meeting, and he did that as a favor to his boss. He said to the protesters, "Thank you very much for that, but you are interrupting the meeting. Please, will you not interrupt the meeting? And will you kindly take a seat, please?" Further outbursts could be heard from the back of the hall as protesters shouted, "What will it take to give us a house?" Sorry, I read that again. What will it take to give us houses? But the meeting was then adjourned for a few minutes. After a brief break, the mayor of Newham, Ruxana Fias, took to the stage to respond to the protests. Ms. Fias said Newham is experiencing, and this is a quote, the most spectacular, traumatizing housing crisis the borough has ever faced, and its temporary housing budget was overblowing. Now, these are two very different, very strong, and powerful assertions. Now, Newham Council has existed since April 1965. Let's check the actual date that they are saying. It says Newham London Borough Council, one of 32 in the United Kingdom capital of London. The council is unusual in that its executive function is controlled by a directly elected mayor of Newham, currently Ruxana Fias. The council was created by the London Government Act 1963 and replaced four local authorities: East Ham Borough Council, West Ham Borough Council, Barking Borough Council, and Woolwich Metropolitan Borough Council. Well, that description may be misleading. There have previously been a number of local authorities responsible for the Newham area. Current local authority was first elected in 1964, a year before formally coming into its powers and prior to the creation of the London Borough of Newham on 1st of April 1965. Newham replaced East Ham Borough Council and West Ham Borough Council, Barking Council for land west of the River Council for land of the River Thames. West Ham was a county borough, which meant that its council had the function of both a county and a borough. From 1889, and East Ham gained that status in 1915. It was previously a non-county borough, and between 1894 and 1904, it was governed by East Ham Urban District Council. Before 1900, Woolwich was governed by the Woolwich Local Borough of Health. Read that again. Before 1900, Woolwich was governed by the Woolwich Local Board of Health. Barking was governed by Barking Town Urban District Council from 1894 to 1931. Local boards were formed for Woolwich in 1852, West Ham in 1856, East Ham in 1878, and Barking Town in 1882. Now, Winston Vaughan is listed in that wiki entry as the chair of the council. And the entry on Ruxana Fias is stupid. It says Ruxana Fias Labour executive mayor, Labour since March 2018. She's not been mayor since March. There was a full month of April between March and May. On the 4th or 5th of May, she became executive mayor after the election on the 3rd of May 2018. So there are 66 councillors. So Labour has got 63, Green have 2, and Independent 1. Now, that number, 63, when compared with the Green 2 and Independent 1, cancels out those 3. And as far as the records that I have accessed, I may not have accessed every single page, but contextually I have accessed the records of the behavior of councillors on Niyam Council. And on the evidence of what is accessible, the Green councillors have not been active in any mentionable way at all. There is no role by the Green councillors about accountability by the council, by the executive mayor, Roxana Fiaz, or by the council collectively. So therefore, when these protesters marched into the old town hall on 16th of January 2023, they did that because nobody else in the council was doing anything. And this was the case in November 2018 when the United Nations so-called special envoy on hardship and poverty, etc., was visiting the United Kingdom, allegedly to collect evidence on poverty and hardship. And Roxana Fiaz was there, and she stated an apology on behalf of the council. But I'll go back to the My London piece on the statement she said at the meeting, as quoted by mylondon.news. Miss Fiaz said, "Before I start my announcement for this evening, I did want to address the comments and the trauma that we have heard from the group of residents that currently reside in Victoria Street." Now, Victoria Street is literally yards, maybe 100 yards from the old town hall in Stratford. And I want to give, that is Roxana Fiaz continuing, I want to give you this assurance. Every single month, and over the past 8 months, myself, that is Roxana Fiaz, and the cabinet member for housing services have been holding meetings with all residents, and we are progressing with our plans to decant families with children from Victoria Street. That's one part of the statement. The next one, she added, "We will be housing families with children in appropriate accommodation. But I have to say this, we are in the midst of the most spectacular, traumatizing housing crisis this borough has ever faced. In the previous 12 months, there has been a reduction in housing supply by some 47%. Our temporary accommodation budget is overblowing. We want families with kids to be living in safe, habitable, healthy properties. And we demand We campaign and we want housing justice for our people. But we have got to ensure that there is equity. We've got to ensure that there is equity and fairness for everyone, because we have over 37,000 people on our housing waiting list, not just in temporary accommodation. Then she says, Ms. Fia said that it would be unfair to put families ahead of people who had been waiting longer on the council waiting list for homes. And she said, every single family in Victoria Street has had every single opportunity to email me, that is Ruxana Fiaz, directly, or email the cabinet member for housing services. Now, I have diagnosed this before, but contextual and topically, this needs further diagnosis. When she says that every single family in Victoria Street has had every single opportunity to email me directly, what does she mean? She means that she can be sent emails, but she gives no undertaking that she would acknowledge receipt or act on the contents, which is what this doesn't say whether she has acted on any single one of the emails that she says every single family in Victoria Street has had the opportunity to send to her. So there is this great big falsification created by this mylondon.news item. It doesn't say anything about the 37,000 people. How did that number appear? Who counted the 37,000 people on New Homes housing waiting list, not just in temporary accommodation? How did these 37,000 people become that collection, that massive number? How long did it take to reach the 37,000? How many people made what practical representations to New Council on housing that would have reduced the number significantly if New Council had listened to the people and had actually looked at the properties that could be renovated throughout the years. There is no clue as to what, if any, action like that New Council has done. So it is assumed that the New Council is guilty of what the protesters accused Roxana Fiaz of doing. They accused her of being interested in evicting people. That's what they said. So Winston Vaughan did not want the evidence to be examined and scrutinized, nor did his Ruxana Fiaz, and nor did any of the other councillors, because this is now more than a month since that meeting took place, and there is no sign whatsoever of a single councillor in Newham Council, including the so-called councillor responsible for the so-called housing, so-called services. So the media, the local media, like this new outlet which has come into circulation about 2 years ago, I think, or 3 years, mylondon.news, is completely phantom journalism. It's not having any impact at all. And 6 years ago, the meeting attended by the United Nations on poverty, Philip Alston. Roxana Fias apologized. This is the piece on the Independent website that had the byline, May Bullman. The mother is quoted at the front of the item as saying, I was in my slippers. It was so cold. I plucked up the courage to ask them to say, I am hungry. I have a baby. But they, meaning the Newham Council Social Services personnel, said, we can't give you anything. So the mom says, I had to drink my baby's milk. Mother describes being forced to drink her baby's milk as people living with poverty come forward to tell United Nations envoy their stories. Now, this is the piece that contains Roxana Fias apologizing or staging an apology, as we say, after hearing the compelling complaints against the Newham Council Social Services. But you see, this meeting took place on the 12th of November 2018. Sometime, at least a year or 2 years before, the mummified body of Lillian John Baptiste, a woman in her 70s, died and her mummified body was discovered in the same area, Canning Town of Newham. So what she said at that meeting, Roxana Fias, let's find that part. She said, according to May Bullman, after hearing the witness statements, Newham's mayor, Roxana Fias, said, can I just apologize on behalf of myself? As mayor of Newham, is addressing the mother, experienced that treatment at the hands of people that we, Newham Council, employ. It shouldn't have happened. Now, that is all of that apology as reported by May Bullman. It didn't say that report, it didn't say that that kind of thing would not happen again. Just as well for Roxana Fias's standpoint or angle, because the body, mummified body of Lillian John Baptiste was found within the next 2 years. Let's look at the story that is accessible about this is dated the 4th of August on the Newham Recorder, 4th of August 2022. A coroner slammed the Metropolitan Police's embarrassing failure, saying he, that is the coroner, believed a thorough search would have found Lillian John Baptiste. That was the Newham Recorder, dated the 4th of August. And the other one on the same Newham Recorder website, dated the 10th of August, reads that somebody is covering up. Lillian John Baptiste's daughter says that. So the Newham Recorder says the authority, that is Newham Council, I think. Let's check whether they mean Newham. Yes. A woman has accused Newham Council of a cover up after her mother lay dead in a flat for 2 years. The authority, that is Newham Council, has apologized for the quality of its communication. Quality of the communication, not the action, with Amanda Alexander, whose mother's remains were found in Canning Town. Colin Ansell, the council's interim chief executive, said he is extremely concerned by the case and expressed sincere apologies to the family if on this occasion, if he is in denial, he thinks that it's a very rare event, that Newham is excellent. If on this occasion the replies fell short of the standard expected, how the fuck? Who the fuck is this Colin Ansell? And then the Newham Recorder says, but the council did not comment on Amanda Alexander's claim that she was being denied access to information by Newham Council about what happened to her mother. And here is a picture of the area, the high rise building apparently that contains the flat in which Lillian John Baptiste died. She was found in Westland House, Rye Mill Street, in February. That was February 2022. So, from the meeting in Canning Town, held on the 12th of November 2018, it's 4 years. And Colin Ansell, reading this quotation, comes across as being mentally dead himself. Lillian John Baptiste lay dead at Westland House, Rye Mill Street, Canning Town, for so long that her body became mummified. And inquest heard. This is a Google image that they're running. Rye Mill Street. Let's check where Rye Mill how far Rymel Street is. So Rymel Street So Westland House is in Rymel Street, Dockland Street, etc. It's in the North Village area. What Newham Council has done in the 4 years since Rukhsana has apologized to the mother that was refused help by the social services is to completely ignore the needs that people like that mother or Lillian John Baptiste needed from the social services. And as I said, there is no evidence anywhere of any of the other councillors, two green councillors and one independent, and the 62-63 Labour councillor, including Winston Bourne, making any comment whatsoever. Now, if Colin Unser talks about the quality of the communication, only the quality of the communication from Newham Council to Amanda Alexander, then obviously he is in denial. He is denial of a series of crimes that Newham Council committed and a series of crimes that he is, after the event, condoning. And there is nothing on the Newham Council website that contains anything like that. And it goes on. So when the United Nations the Special Envoy, Philip Alston, published his report about the United Kingdom, let's see what, if anything, he said about the role of the Newham Council, the evidence he found on the Newham Council. Now, this is a piece published on the website of the University of Bristol. It is called Bristol University Poverty Institute, Bristol Poverty Institute. On 6th of November 2018, the University of Bristol Law School hosted a meeting with Professor Philip Alston, UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, and 8 organizations. This was his only meeting focusing specifically on extreme poverty in rural areas in the United Kingdom. A short 21 pages final report on his mission to the UK has now been published. Let's go to that report, 21 pages. And it is dated the General Assembly, 23rd of April 2019. Human Rights Council, 41st session. And the main heading is Visit to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Report of the Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights. Now, let's go and check the main focus that I'm interested in to see if Alston referred to the corruption. Let's see what he's doing. So, what actually happened in the contents of the report authored by Philip Alston was that he completely misrepresented what was happening in the United Kingdom. For example, he didn't talk about the role of the local council at all. Alston lied in his report and focused entirely on austerity. Now, austerity itself is a criminally conceived word of denial of the truth about cuts and poverty. We shall be talking in the next editions about Newham Council, Philip Alston, Lillian John Baptiste, and the role of the Council Social Services, and the lack of the audit and accountability by Newham Council about housing whatsoever. So this is 01:28 hours GMT on Monday, the 20th of February 2023. And we're ending this broadcast, which has now become 1 hour and 31 minutes and 37